Have you ever had the feeling that you are not a part of this human world? As if you had a code that only you know. As if you didn't care about the commotion around you and instead marched to the beat of your drum. You may be a Sigma male if you do. Although this uncommon personality type is frequently misinterpreted, they have remarkable traits that set them apart from the rest of the pack. Sigma males have unique ways of thinking, doing, and living. They treat everyone with respect and are unaffected by expectations or social conventions. They face some difficulties in life, but they also enjoy certain benefits that others do not. They are the pinnacle of innovators and nonconformists. In this video, we will explore the 7 craziest things that only Sigma males do and how they make them unique. Number 7. Sigma males don't give a damn about getting along. Sigma males don't care what other people think, in contrast to those who want to fit in and get approval from their peers. They don't feel pressure to fit in or win over others. In a society where fame and recognition are everything, they are happy with who they are and where they are in it. They don't seem to care that this may cause them to receive needless attention. They don't feel compelled to modify their beliefs for anyone since they firmly believe in them. They also realize that being different may work to their advantage by opening doors and helping them succeed. For example, many successful businessmen, innovators, and artists are Sigma males who dared to be different and pursue their ideas. They didn't let the opinions of others stop them from pursuing their goals and creating something unique and worthwhile. They didn't hesitate to take chances and take on obstacles despite the threat of criticism or rejection from the majority. Their curiosity and intrigue drove them rather than a desire to astound or appease others. Nonetheless, Sigma males don't deliberately flout social expectations. They have nothing against forming a group or adhering to a clique. Simply put, they downplay the significance of fitting in and adhering to social norms. They choose their path and stay on it regardless of what other people think. They are neither reclusive nor disobedient. They are sincere and independent. Many people are enamored with the concept of impressing others, going so far as to buy pointless things to impress someone they don't like. This is also the reason why people are still unhappy and in poverty. If you live someone else's life, you will never be really satisfied. The majority of Sigma males are happy because of this. They can raise their self-esteem without the help of others. They find internal contentment and tranquility and do not need the approval of others. Sincere happiness comes from this mentality and cannot be bought with money. Number 6. They are often lost in thought. If there's a reason Sigma males are frequently seen as distant or cold, it's most likely because of their propensity to get lost in thought. They interact with a few individuals proactively. Even though they are quiet and contemplative, they have a fast-paced mindset that might be challenging to communicate with others who don't share their viewpoint. They seem to be speaking in a foreign tongue. However, there might be a wonderful moment when 2 Sigma male personalities come together. They can comprehend one another's mental processes and frequently discover points of agreement when speaking. They can relate to one another on a lot of levels, so it's like speaking with a long-lost friend. The world does not bore or disinterest such people. All they are interested in is their inner world. They can explore a wide range of concepts and options because of their vivid imagination and creative spirit. They are frequently drawn to abstract, difficult subjects like physics, philosophy, and the arts. They take pleasure in broadening their knowledge and learning new things. They won't settle for cliched or shallow responses. They're eager to go farther and uncover the real story behind everything. This implies, therefore, that Sigma males are prone to mental overload or distraction. They could struggle to maintain present moment awareness or concentrate on just one activity at a time. They could also find it challenging to express their ideas to other people clearly and effectively, particularly if they feel misinterpreted or condemned. Instead of sharing their ideas with those who might not understand or be interested in them, they could choose to keep them to themselves. Number 5. Sigma males tend to do it alone since they are self-sufficient and don't require other people's approval or company to prosper. They can take care of themselves rather well, therefore they don't need other people to make them happy or successful. because they can manage and appreciate things at their own speed, which is why they often choose to do things alone. For example, many Sigma males like traveling alone since it allows them to see new places and cultures without having to compromise or follow someone else's schedule. Their ability to go, do, and explore as they like allows children to gain more self and world awareness. Additionally, individuals are exposed to unique chances and difficulties that they may not otherwise experience through such travel. Since they are confident in their abilities and know how to find solutions, they don't fear being by themselves in unfamiliar situations. For those who thrive in social situations, the idea of being alone might be intimidating. However, being alone is as natural to Sigma males as breathing. They don't behave in an aloof or unpleasant manner. All they want is the comfort and convenience of their own company. Sigma males value quiet as a way to attain inner peace. It gives them a peaceful setting where they can focus and think clearly without interruptions. Like everyone else, they place a high priority on emotions and connections. They do, however, communicate uniquely, and they may periodically require time away from social gatherings to recover. They respect their boundaries and needs, and they expect others to feel the same way. They don't require constant attention or validation from others since they are self-sufficient and autonomous. People are more creative when they are alone and have no outside distractions to impede their ability to reach their deepest thoughts and come up with novel ideas. This draw frequently takes individuals into artistic disciplines where they may safely explore their minds and bring their ideas to life. Instead of being limited by accepted norms or expectations, they establish their standards and requirements. They are creative, forward-thinking people who usually surprise others with their odd and astute thoughts. Number 4, they frequently question the current quo. Contrary to popular belief, Sigma males are more likely to actively question the status quo than to be rebellious without a reason. They don't just act unconventionally. They think it's important to challenge the status quo and seek out better answers. For instance, a large number of Sigma males are entrepreneurs and innovators who develop new goods or services that upend the current market and benefit consumers. They refuse to accept things as they are. They aim to enhance it and increase its effectiveness and efficiency. They don't mind taking chances or trying out novel concepts in the face of opposition or criticism from others. Instead of being afraid of failing or being rejected, what drives them is their vision and passion. Questions like, "Why are we doing it this way?" are frequently posed by Sigma males. Is there another, better method? Others with this mindset are more likely to think creatively and innovatively and to solve long-standing issues. Additionally, it makes them unpopular with certain powerful individuals who could be intimidated or challenged by their outlandish and independent viewpoints. This may result in some thought-provoking discussions where Sigma males can show off their capacity for logic and reasoning while standing by their convictions. However, Sigma males are not intimidated by these discussions. They are never afraid to question the status quo and defend their beliefs. Naturally, not everyone is fond of this mindset, but it may be highly motivating for others. Sigma males are unconvertible and frequently the first to defend the morally upright. For safety's sake, some would rather stay in the status quo and not upset anyone, but Sigma males don't see the need. They would prefer to make a statement, even if it means defying expectations. This does not imply that they are careless or reckless. It simply implies they would prefer not to accept things as they are than dispute them. Sigma males are not followers, they are leaders. They do not go with the flow. They forge ahead on their own. They reject the current state of affairs. They make positive changes to it. They don't mind being unique. They see it as a positive attribute. Without a reason, they are not rebels. They are purpose-driven rebels. Number 3, they spend a lot of time, often alone, working on their creative endeavor or interest. These people frequently lose themselves for extended amounts of time in their pastime or creative endeavors. When they find something interesting, they devote themselves entirely to it and often become engrossed to the point of losing sight of time. They take pleasure in exploring every aspect of the topic they have selected and experimenting with various strategies to arrive at the best solution. Some Sigma males, for example, could enjoy building models, creating video games, or creating music. They do these things for fun, but they also do them because they like the challenge and satisfaction of creating something unique and amazing. They are so confident in their abilities and judgment that they don't need outside input. They can avoid becoming distracted or bored because of their persistent focus and commitment. Whatever their job, whether it is testing, programming, or painting, Sigma males put it before socializing. They may even be defensive of their work since they take pride in it. They don't want any interruptions while working since they are in their universe. They frequently work through the night and get a boost of energy from it. When working alone, Sigma males find comfort in feeling productive. They can stretch their boundaries and find new ways to express themselves artistically. Some people may develop an obsession with it, but it offers them a sense of fulfillment that nothing else can. Number 2, they could vanish and then randomly resurface. Although Sigma males are excellent at making an impression, they can also blend in when necessary. They may be there and conversing 1 minute, then abruptly vanish and then reappearance later, as if nothing had occurred. For instance, while some Sigma males might love going to social gatherings like parties, sometimes they just need time away from the throng to unwind and refuel. They don't feel pressured to mix with everyone or remain until the very end. All they do is go with the flow and feel of things. If they don't think it's worth making a big deal out of leaving, they could also walk away without saying goodbye or providing an explanation. They could show up again later and carry on their conversations as if they had never gone, maybe even at the same event. Given their propensity for boredom, they dare to take a break and enjoy their alone time rather than force themselves to remain in an uninteresting setting. They could also vanish when there is too much activity and commotion so they can have a brief but essential period of quiet. This is just a characteristic of who they are, therefore they don't feel the need to justify their behavior to others. They aren't rude or self-centered. They are just self-reliant and adventurous. For Sigma males, this vanishing behavior may also serve as a coping method. If they perceive a disagreement or possible threat, they can decide to cut themselves off from other people. Though it may seem confusing to others around them, this conduct is only their attempt to prevent unneeded controversy. They are not weak or cowardly. They are merely astute and well-planned. They pick their conflicts carefully and know when to fight and when to back down. Their dislike of small conversations and politeness is another explanation for their sporadic disappearances. Social graces are generally boring and a waste of time for Sigma males. They are more concerned with getting to the core of an issue and engaging in long discussions that result in sincere connections. Sigma males tend to shy away from casual chat when it's the norm. They are not conceited or snobbish. They are straightforward and honest. They dislike wasting time or effort on things that are unimportant or superficial. It is not intended to be seen as a show of contempt or malice toward others when they disappear and then resurface. It conveys their need for privacy, dislike of idle chat, and inclination toward fulfilling relationships. They are not sorcerers or ghosts. All they are is Sigma males who cherish their independence and uniqueness. Number 1, Sigma males mentally prepare for every eventuality. Their preparation often goes beyond realism, delving into imagination as they imagine many situations and plan for every possibility. While being prepared for the future is something that everyone aspires to, Sigma males go above and above. They constantly assess every scenario they encounter early on, which can occasionally lead to overanalysis. Their preparation often goes beyond realism, delving into imagination as they imagine many situations and plan for every possibility. Making plans might help you feel more secure about the future and give you an advantage over your competitors. Excessive preparation, nevertheless, might lead to worry and anxiety if plans don't work out. People occasionally obsess over unimportant things and waste time worrying about them. While planning and visualization are crucial, don't go overboard. If you spend all of your evenings watching Netflix, it won't be possible to fulfill your fantasy of owning a beautiful automobile. Planning too much might result in indolence and stagnation. Rather than becoming bogged down in your thoughts, keep your attention in the here and now and act. If you enjoyed today's video, then make sure to like, share with your friends, subscribe to our channel, and click on the bell icon to be always updated with the most exciting content as soon as it's uploaded. Thanks for watching. Click the video shown on your screen to watch our next video. See you there.